The Japanese Cinematic Horizons is a personal challenge to expand my knowledge of Japanese cinema and all it has to offer. It's far too easy to stay within the areas that I know and love, and I get far too comfortable in, and not expand my horizons. I've been delving into Japanese cinema for several years now, largely kickstarted by the Japanuary Challenge, and I've found that challenges like these are a great way to focus on a journey like this. So, the challenge for myself is to cover 20 topics, each with a selection of 5 films that I've never seen before, to watch over the course of this year. These categories can include genres, movements, styles, actors, directors, writers, or any other kind of topic. The idea is that these are categories that I haven't explored as much as I'd like and don't know much or anything about. Let's just jump into the categories. The first category is the watch list of shame. Now, in general, the watch list of shame are films that, especially as someone who talks about Japanese cinema on the internet, I really should have seen by now. If I do end up doing this challenge in future years, the watch list of shame will undoubtedly be a mainstay. The choices I've made this time around happen to be 5 critically acclaimed films from highly renowned directors that, for whatever reason, I haven't watched yet. The selected films are Sancho the Bailiff, directed by Kenji Mizoguchi; An Autumn Afternoon, directed by Yasujiro Ozu; Redbeard, directed by Akira Kurosawa; The Face of Another, directed by Hiroshi Teshigahara; and Nobody Knows, directed by Hirokazu Koreeda. Again, each of these films are critically acclaimed, and I really should have seen them by now, but for whatever reason, I just not got around to them. Category number 2, V Cinema. The popularity of V Cinema in the West has been on the rise over the past couple of years, with Arrow releasing a fantastic set that I own, and Tom Mess releasing his book, Japanese Film and the Challenge of Video, which I also own, amongst other developments. I, however, have only seen a few V Cinema titles, and with literally thousands of V Cinema, or more accurately DTV, titles out there, I think it's safe to say that it's a massive blind spot for me. Since I already have it, I'll be selecting films that are in the Arrow box set that I haven't watched yet. The selected films will be Carlos, directed by Kazuhiro Kiyuchi; Stranger, directed by Shunichi Nagasaki; Burning Dog, directed by Yoichi Sai; Danger Point: The Road to Hell, directed by Yasuharu Hasebe; and XX Beautiful Hunter, directed by Masaru Konuma. It will be interesting to delve into the world of V Cinema, since it's an area I've read a fair amount, but have actually seen very little. The third category is modern films. This is another large blind spot for me, as I tend to focus on silent films to pre-2010s era films in general. I have seen Japanese films from as recently as 2025, but only 2 from that year. These 5 films will be ones released throughout 2023 to 2025. The selected films are Evil Does Not Exist, Ryusuke Hamaguchi; Call Me Chihiro, directed by Rikiya Imaizumi; Look Back, directed by Kiyotaka Oshiyama; Happy End, directed by Neo Sora; and Kokuho, directed by Lee Sang-il. I love to live in the past and enjoy the plethora of films that the history of Japanese cinema has to offer, but I think it's valuable to see new films as well. Not to mention, I've loved many of the modern films I have seen, so it's good to give myself an excuse to watch more. Category 4, 20s and 30s. I was originally going to have this category be silent cinema, but upon inspection, I realized that the amount of silent Japanese films I have left to see that are actually fully extant is a sadly dwindling list. So instead, this is a selection of films from the 20s and 30s, which I am fairly familiar with, but still have much to see and explore. The selected films are Crossroads, directed by Tenosuke Kinogasa; Eternal Heart, directed by Hiroshi Shimizu; Humanity and Paper Balloons, directed by Sadao Yamanaka; The Messieurs and a Woman, directed by Hiroshi Shimizu; and The Story of the Last Chrysanthemum, directed by Kenji Mizoguchi. These classic films from the 20s and 30s can sometimes feel difficult to approach, but I can safely say that I've enjoyed, or even loved, the majority that I have seen from this era. Category number 5, Tokusatsu. Outside of Godzilla, Gamera, and some Power Rangers when I was young, the tokusatsu genre is an area of Japanese cinema I've largely not explored. I'll purposely avoid the kaiju section of tokusatsu for this selection, since it is what I am already most familiar with, and I don't think I'll dip my toes in just yet to the more eccentric tokusatsu films that I've heard of. The selected films will be Tokyo, The Last Megalopolis, directed by Akio Jisoji; Cyber Ninja, directed by Keita Amamiya; Lady Battle Cop, directed by Akihisa Okamoto; Kamen Rider Zio, directed by Keito Amamiya; and Zebra Man, directed by Takashi Miike. This really is an area where I don't know what to expect. I have Keita Amamiya twice because I've seen Zeiram and thought it was great, so I feel like he's a safe choice, which might be a bit antithesis to the point of this challenge, but hey, we make excuses here. It might also be a mistake to include a seemingly random Kamen Rider film, especially since I have virtually no knowledge of the series, but I'm swinging for the fences here and hoping for the best. Category number 6. Meiko Kaji Sampler. Meiko Kaji is an icon, and somebody that I'm constantly reminded about thanks to Richard F., also known as F Yeah Meiko Kaji, on various platforms. Yet, I've only seen 3 of her films so far. That's an egregious error that must be corrected here. The selected films will be Wandering Ginza Butterfly, directed by Kazuhiko Yamaguchi; Female Prisoner 701 Scorpion, directed by Shunya Ito; Female Prisoner Scorpion Jailhouse 41, directed by Shunya Ito; Jeans Blue No Future, directed by Sato Nakajima; and Double Suicide of Sonezaki, directed by Yasuzo Masamura. One aspect of Meiko Kaji that I am familiar with is actually her music, which I've listened to quite a bit while I work, so I'm sure I'll recognize some of the songs in these films. She has a wonderful voice, and I can highly recommend checking out any of her albums. Category number 7. Tora-san, Please Forgive Me. Japan has had many long cinematic series, and perhaps the longest amongst them, especially with mostly the same actors and creatives behind the camera, is the Tora-san series. With 51 films spanning from 1969 to 2019, it has always been a daunting series to approach, so I have avoided it until now. So why not start with the first 5 films? The selected films will be It's Tough Being a Man, directed by Yoji Yamada; Tora-san's Cherished Mother, directed by Yoji Yamada; Tora-san, His Tender Love, directed by Azuma Morisaki; Tora-san's Grand Scheme, directed by Shunichi Kobayashi; and Tora-san's Runaway, directed by Yoji Yamada. From what I understand, the Tora-san series is probably episodic enough that I could have chosen a selection of films from throughout the series, but I figured it would be best to start with the first 5, and then I can choose whether I want to pick and choose in the future or continue watching them in order. Category number 8. Originally written by Seiichi Matsumoto. Seiichi Matsumoto was a prolific writer of detective novels whose works have received many film adaptations over the years, and I've only seen 2 of them so far. The selected films will be Stakeout, directed by Yoshitaro Nomura; Zero Focus, directed by Yoshitaro Nomura; Beast Alley, directed by Eizo Sugawa; The Castle of Sand, directed by Yoshitaro Nomura; and Amagi Pass, directed by Haruhiko Mimura. One of the films that I saw that was written by Matsumoto was Death on the Mountain, directed by Toshio Sugie, and while I had some issues with the execution, I thought the story was very interesting. So I really look forward to seeing what some of his more well-known adaptations have to offer. Category 9. Hell Hath No Fury. Perhaps most famously seen in Kanato Shindo's Kuroneko, stories of women seeking vengeance after being wronged, primarily by men, have a long history in Japan. This tradition was carried on in Japanese cinema, with many of these films concentrated in the 1950s and 60s. I have actually seen a fair number of these films before, but it's a topic I'm interested in delving further into. I'm purposely trying to avoid any of the many Yotsuya Kaidan adaptations since I've already seen a few of those. The selected films will be The Ghost Cat of Oyama Crossing, directed by Bin Kato. The Ghost of Kasane, directed by Nobuo Nakagawa. Woman from the Sea, directed by Koreyoshi Kurahara. Bake Neko, A Vengeful Spirit, directed by Yoshihiro Ishikawa. And The Snow Woman, directed by Tokuzo Tanaka. I generally think I know what to expect here, but who knows, maybe there will be some surprises. Category 10, Remote Okinawa. Okinawa has a long and storied history separate from Japan, making it as distinct to Japan as Hawaii is to the US. The few films I've seen centered on Okinawa have been impactful and enlightening about its unique story. The selected films will be Dear Summer Sister, directed by Nagisa Oshima. Untamagiru, directed by Go Takamine. Nabie's Love, directed by Yuji Nakae. Breathe In, Breathe Out, directed by Tetsuo Shinohara. And The Crying Wind, directed by Yoichi Higashi. This was probably the most difficult category to find films for, but hopefully I've made some good selections. I really don't know what to expect here, but ideally we will get some unique glimpses into the life of Okinawans. Category 11, New Wave. I tend to get it in my head that New Wave Japanese cinema is hard to watch or inaccessible, and then when I actually look back at what I've seen, I love it. I don't think 5 more films are going to break down that mental barrier, but it should be another scratch in the surface. The film selections are The Naked Island, directed by Kaneto Shindo. The Insect Woman, directed by Shohei Imamura. Black Sun, directed by Koreyoshi Kurahara. Manji, directed by Yasuzo Masamura. And Silence Has No Wings, directed by Kazuo Kuroki. I fully expect to either love or at least admire all of these films based on my previous experiences, but you never know. Category 12, Short Films. I've never really been one to go out of my way to watch shorts before, but I've incidentally watched a fair amount. Here, I want to intentionally check out a few. The selected films will be Akko, directed by Hiroshi Teshigahara. Emotion, directed by Nobuhiko Obayashi. A Girl, She Is 100%, directed by Naoto Yamakawa. Tokyo Blood, directed by Gakuryu Ishii. And Ryusei Kacho, directed by Hideaki Anno. Is it cheating to choose short films from well-known directors? Maybe. Do I care? Absolutely not. I am at least not familiar with Naoto Yamakawa, so I don't know what to expect there. Category 13, directed by Koji Wakamatsu. Wakamatsu is arguably one of the most crucial directors that I still haven't seen a single film from. As a pioneer of the pink film genre and someone unafraid to approach the most controversial aspects of Japanese society, it's safe to say that his films often fall through the cracks when choosing what I want to watch. So I can take this opportunity to finally delve into his works. The selected films will be Violated Angels, Go-Go Second Time Virgin, Violence Without a Cause, Violent Virgin, and Shinjuku Mad, of course, all directed by Koji Wakamatsu. These might be fairly accused of being generic or popular selections, but as an entryway into his filmography, I wouldn't call that a negative. Category 14, Anti-War Dramas. These ones are best saved for when I want my soul to hurt. The selected films will be A Hen in the Wind, directed by Yasujiro Ozu. Hiroshima, directed by Hideo Sakigawa. The Burmese Harp, directed by Konichikawa. Fires on the Plain, directed by Konichikawa. And Hanagatami, directed by Nobuhiko Obayashi. I would dare to say that Kihachi Okamoto's film The Human Bullet is one of the best and most fierce anti-war films ever made in any country, and Japan in general has had many great anti-war films. So it's about time that I explore them further, even if it might hurt a bit to do so. Category 15, Yakuza Fiction. Ninkyo Ega, or chivalrous Yakuza films, were all the rage in the 50s and 60s, telling the mythical tale of the honest, moral Yakuza. The selected films will be The Symbol of a Man, directed by Akinori Matsuo, Brutal Tales of Chivalry, directed by Kiyoshi Saaki, Blood of Revenge, directed by Tai Kato, Red Peony Gambler, directed by Kosaku Yamashita, and A Scarred Life, directed by Shigehiro Ozawa. While I've seen a fair amount of Ninkyo, I'm also very aware of how little I've seen thanks to people like Nathan Stewart and others on Letterboxd, who have reviewed many of them in great detail. Category 16. Honest Yakuza Tales. After Kenji Fukasaku released the first Battles Without Honor and Humanity film, there was a wave of Jitsuroku, or true account Yakuza films, that followed in its footsteps, supposedly showing the real side of Yakuza life as an antithesis to the previously popular Ninkyo Ega. The selected films will be A True Story of the Private Ginza Police, directed by Junya Sato, Violent Streets, directed by Hideo Gosha, Operation Plasma in Osaka, directed by Sadao Nakajima, Hokiriku Proxy War, directed by Kinji Fukasaku, and The Story of a Man Among Men, directed by Kosaku Yamashita. Similar to Ninkyo, I've seen a fair amount, but thanks to the people I follow on Letterboxd, I also know how much more there is left to see. Category 17. Raizo Ichikawa Sampler. If eyes could pierce, Raizos would slice right through tanks. I've seen a mere 5 of the 159 films that are listed on Letterboxd that he is in. He is an icon of Japanese cinema who died tragically young, yet left a huge impact in that short time. The selected films will be Conflagration, directed by Konichikawa, The Broken Commandment, directed by Konichikawa, The Third Shadow Warrior, directed by Umetsugu Inoue, The Betrayal, directed by Tokuzo Tanaka, and A Certain Killer, directed by Kazuo Mori. I'm very excited to dig a bit further into Raizo's filmography. A decent-sized chunk of it includes various series like The Sleepy Eyes of Death, but I wanted to stick to standalone films for these selections. Category 18. Nikatsu Borderless Action. Having owned and read Mark Schilling's book, No Borders, No Limits, Nikatsu Action Cinema, for quite a few years now, it is a great shame that I haven't explored these films further. The stylistic tendencies in these films and the stars that were born from them are some of the most unique in Japanese cinema, worthy of exploration. The selected films will be Rusty Knife, directed by Toshio Masuda, The Warped Ones, directed by Koreyoshi Kurahara, Black Tight Killers, directed by Yasuharu Hasebe, Occult is My Passport, directed by Takashi Nomura, and Branded to Kill, directed by Seijun Suzuki. This category has me feeling spoiled for choice, especially with so many eye-catching titles like Cruel Gun Story or Velvet Hustler. I'm not sure how accurate these titles are to the Japanese titles, but they certainly have my attention. Category 19. Punk Films. Not necessarily cyberpunk, but that does apply. From the ones I've seen, I've really enjoyed them, whether they were silly, fun beat-em-ups like Bebop High School, or more serious, introspective films like Blue Spring. So, let's get a deeper look here. The selected films will be Throw Away Your Books, Rally in the Streets, directed by Shuji Tsurayama. Shuffle, directed by Gakuryu Ishii. The Lonely Hearts Club Band in September, directed by Shunichi Nagasaki. First City, directed by Gakuryu Ishii. And 964 Pinocchio, directed by Shozen Fukui. The poster for 964 Pinocchio in particular has been something I see often, and I always wonder what it could possibly be about. So I'm looking forward to finally checking that one out. And the final category is documentary films. I love a good documentary, but I haven't watched nearly as many as I'd like. I'm not sure I'll ever come across one with as strong of a subject as is in The Emperor's Naked Army Marches On, but I'm certain there are still many great Japanese documentaries out there to see. The selected films will be The Weavers of Nishijin, directed by Toshio Matsumoto; Minamata, Their Victims and Their World, directed by Noriaki Tsuchimoto; The Ondekoza, directed by Tai Kato; Tokyo Ga, directed by Wim Wenders. I know, not a Japanese director. And The Story of Yanagawa's Canals, directed by Isao Takahata. Documentaries can be some of the most engaging films in all of cinema, or they can be complete slogs that are incredibly difficult to get through. I don't think any of the choices I've made will be slogs, but we will find out. And that's it. I feel like this is a great opportunity to delve not necessarily deeper into Japanese cinema, but wider, spreading my area of knowledge outward instead of staying where I'm already comfortable. Who knows? Maybe I'll find new favorites or curiosities that will bring me down rabbit holes I don't expect. That's the goal. I don't know if I'll come back and make another video after I've watched all the films or not, but regardless, that would be at the end of the year or early into next year if I do. You can find the link to this list in the pinned comment. If you're watching this, feel free to join me in this challenge. You can choose your own categories or use the ones I've already selected. You could even adapt this to whatever country or area you're interested in. You can also pare it down by doing maybe 5 or 10 categories, or only 2 or 3 film selections per category. Feel free to adapt this challenge however you see fit, and let me know if you do, so I can check it out. With that said, this video is over. Go watch a Japanese film, and have a great rest of your day.